Perhaps the biggest difficulty in providing reports, medical, physical, psychological expertise, as objective evidence is the time frame imposed by the decision makers and legal representatives. The purpose of our work is to explore the residing imprint that trauma has left on a person's life. When trauma has taken place within the context of relationships, the capacity for healing also lies within relationships. As such, our clinicians require time to establish a relationship in which trust can begin to be experienced and disclosure can start to feel therapeutic rather than violent. An environment needs to be created in which the survivor can gradually test the climate in which he or she can begin to speak of feelings with another who is able to receive more than the narrative alone. This can take many months, and in some cases even years, particularly in the case of extreme and prolonged trauma, and is a process that is sometimes difficult to predict and should not be hurried. Our clinicians are frequently under considerable pressure to meet targets and timeframes that are incompatible with what we see in the consulting room. The majority of the people that we see are so severely traumatized that to try to force the process would inevitably result in compromising the integrity of the process to provide objective evidence. Time and skill on the part of the clinician is required in the building of trust that is so essential in order to unpack the experience of very damaged, often inarticulate individuals whose lives are filled with chaotic feelings and massive fear. In our view, it is only by building trust that we can obtain accurate information. In such cases, in the face of deadlines and imminent decisions by the courts or UKBA, we identify why it would be clinically inappropriate to provide a full report. We provide an interim report setting out the reasons why. Our reports focus on the relational impact of the trauma, reasons for delayed or late disclosures, as well as the minute and forensic details of the trauma sustained. Our work frequently involves different members of a multidisciplinary team, and their combined reports provide a multifaceted view of the person's physical and mental health. Our clinicians are also interested in the long-term neurological damage that is sustained both in terms of brain injury and the more recent research being undertaken looking at specific neural pathways that are shaped by traumatic experience and influence subsequent stress responses throughout life. Our ability to take a multidisciplinary approach enables decision makers to understand the complexities behind a person's presentations. In our experience, the more information available to the decision maker is the more likely they are to reach a just decision. And I'd like, before I close, just to give two examples of complex trauma requiring long-term therapeutic interventions. Now, Miss A, who was born into a volatile, war-stricken African country, was referred to the HBF by her legal representative with a history of being trafficked to the UK for sexual exploitation. Miss A came to her first 3 assessment meetings, curled up in the chair and went to sleep. She was able to eventually say, "I sleep during the day because the men used to come at night." Miss K had been taken as an abandoned baby to the brothel and lived and grew up in the brothel with 5 other children. She became pregnant, produced a baby girl, which was taken from her when the baby was 1 month old. She was forced to continue to work throughout her pregnancy and immediately after the birth. The pregnancy occurred 3 years prior to her being trafficked to the UK. She's now considered to be over 18. She has absolutely no idea how old she is. But however old she is, she has many of the mannerisms and speech of a child, and is only truly relaxed when she's playing with other children in the waiting room. I don't want to start a whole new discussion about age assessments, but I could. I'm nearly done. The sleeping pattern in my room continued for a further 6 weeks. The breakthrough came when, on finding that I'd moved a photograph of 2 children playing together, she came towards me in a very menacing manner. She screamed into my face, "What have you done to the children?" This was the cue that I needed to enter her world of abuse, violence, and betrayal. In that moment of anger and intense hatred, I'd become her tormentor, the woman who controlled her in the brothel and who was capable of destroying children. We have now built a therapeutic relationship in which she's been able, over a period of 1 year and 7 months, with immense anger, pain, and grief, to spit out the catalogue of violations and injuries to which she was subjected, the details of which I will not recount. The work is continuing, and we are addressing now her panic attacks, her violent nightmares, her flashbacks, her episodes of dissociation, and her suicidal thoughts. I wrote an interim report at the beginning of 2010. She's finally agreed to see a woman doctor for an examination in the HBF. She would not take off her clothes before anyone during that time to have an examination that might in fact be helpful in her case.